Welcome to the Adobe Illustrator Tour of Tools, Part 1. This tutorial covers polygons, fill, outline, and patterns. Welcome to the Adobe Illustrator Tour of Tools, Part 1. In many ways, beginning students find Adobe Illustrator's vector-based tools much more intuitive to use than manipulating pixels in the raster-based Photoshop program. After all, it is much easier to move an object than to move an entire background of pixels. Drawing your attention to the main toolbar, similar to Adobe Photoshop, anywhere you see an icon that has a little white triangle located in the bottom right-hand corner, that means there is a stack of tools or a family of tools stowed together. So pick and hold down that tool and a flyout will deploy, showing you the entire family that's stacked within that one icon. You can switch between or toggle between the tools in each set of stacked family of tools. So the tool set that we're going to focus on right now is the rectangle tool. And if I pick on that tool and hold it down, a flyout deploys of a whole bunch of different polygon tools. Now with my finger held down on the mouse, if I drag my mouse over to this far edge, you'll see a dark gray band with that little white triangle. If you'll move your mouse over there and then let go, you'll tear off that family of tools. And now that family of tools can float on your screen. So this is what we're going to work on for a moment. We'll go back and forth between the polygon tools and the move tool, which is this black selection arrow. Okay. So unlike Adobe Photoshop, this is not a foreground and background designation of color here on the main toolbar. One of these depicts the fill and the other one depicts the outline, or as it's called in Adobe Illustrator, the stroke of an object. So an object may or may not have a fill. In this case, the fill is designated as white, but if I pick on this little box below one of these three icons here below the fill and outline, this indicates no fill with a black outline. So if I were to make a rectangle with no fill and a black outline, I can pick, hold my mouse down, and drag it out. I have a rectangle. Okay. So if I go to try to move it, what you'll notice is if there's no fill, there's nothing for Illustrator to pick. I have to get close to either a center point or one of the object's outlines to move it. However, if I were to fill this rectangle with white pixels, it looks very much the same as it did before, except now I can pick anywhere on the object and move it around. So how do you get colors in the fill? Well, there are two different places you can do this. Along the top, you have a control panel, which is very similar to the options panel in Adobe Photoshop. So when you're on the polygon tool, one of your options is fill and outline or stroke. So from here, I can pick from the basic color pattern. I could pick orange, for example. And if that wasn't the exact orange I wanted, I could double click in the fill box and get the color picker, just like we did in Photoshop. Now over here is what we call the swatch panel. And it's replicated up here on the control panel. So if you don't want to have to move your mouse all the way to the top of your screen, all you need to do is deploy the swatch panel and you can switch your colors here. Now on both the control panel and on the swatch panel, In the lower bottom left-hand corner, you have a Swatch Library menu. This is where all your patterns can be found. We have gradients and we have patterns. So if I go to patterns and I pick decorative and I pick Vonster, just for example, here are some of the patterns that come preloaded in Adobe Illustrator. To move a pattern over when it has a fill in it, especially if it's a repeating pattern, you hold the tilde button down on your keyboard, which is located in the upper left-hand corner, just below the escape key. If you hold that down and then use your arrow keys, which are referred to as nudge keys in Adobe Illustrator, you can move your pattern around. You have to be on the black arrow to be able to use the tilde and the nudge keys. That's just a little tip. Now let's say that you like this pattern, but that it is too large and you want the scale to be smaller. Every time you pick on a pattern from one of the libraries, it shows up temporarily in your swatch panel. So this becomes part of your working drawing. It's a copy from the library. So what you want to do is take this copy that exists in your swatch library, pick and hold down your mouse and drag it out onto your screen. This will show you the extent of the pattern and the scale. Using your black arrow, hold the Shift key down, drag from a corner to make your pattern smaller. When it's the scale that you want, you're going to pick and drag it back into your swatch box. Then delete the pattern that you originally created. Now let's compare patterns. We're going to make another rectangle, and this time we're going to put the new pattern in it. So that's the difference between the original scale of the pattern and the scale of the pattern that we just created. Now let's say that I wanted a square and I wanted it a particular size. Pick once on your screen. You can define the size of the square in this dialog box. And I can change the colors while it's still selected. Now, the reason why it didn't change colors, even though it's selected, is that this stroke is forward in this group. So if I just picked on the fill so that it comes forward, and then I pick a fill from the swatches, it will fill the square here. And if I pick on the outline and that comes forward, that's the active tool, and then I can change the characteristics of this square that way. Experiment with all of the polygon tools on this stat set of tools.